What's up, Call of Duty fans? IHOLDSHIFT here, caster and a little bit of an analyst as we were going through Modern Warfare last year. In case you're not familiar with me, this is going to be my first ever Scrim analysis video, something that I've wanted to do for a long time, but wanted to make sure all the pieces were in place before I put out some sort of a video with it. So with that in mind, this is November the 22nd, OpTic Gaming Chicago playing up against the Atlanta FaZe on Crossroads Strike. Important to note, though, that this is actually before all of the changes have happened to the spawn. So there are some considerations as far as how things may have changed. The other thing I want to make sure you guys keep in mind as we take a look at Crossroads specifically is that this is, of course, a 3-lane map. You've got essentially north to south lanes that are being built here on the map. But the interesting thing, based on where the spawns and the hard points are, this map actually functions more east to west than north to south. It is still 3 lanes, but it's a little bit different because this one over the middle is a bit small. And also with that, when I say not just the hardpoint locations, but also the spawn locations, as of before the spawn patch that came through from Treyarch today, the 3 key spawns that you typically saw were in these 3 positions, with a couple of considerations depending on how the north and south flood was coming through. Sometimes you'll spawn down there, sometimes you'll spawn up here. And for this video specifically, I did have a chance to go through and put this in with both Scump and Dashy's POV. So let's jump on in, as you're going to see the first consideration for OpTic Chicago is how exactly do you go from this spawn to get over to here? This is what you want, right? So the real consideration is, do you want to play from the bottom or do you want to try to play from the top? And there's not really a clear answer for Chicago as far as what they want to do in that mind. And with that, what you're going to start to see is that you're going to get a double AR setup to where you've got one member from Atlanta right here on barrels, the other back here on the top. And Atlanta's just trying to establish control here. So where Chicago would then have to make up their mind as far as, do you want to try to push through this way, or do you want to do what Scump is doing by trying to push through the back? The one thing that we don't really see from Chicago here is the fact that not both players go this way. One cut through the middle over here, as Chicago is trying to make the decision of, we really want this mid alley before we decide if we want to play for Hill or if we want to play here. And it does give them a lot of time. That's the good thing, is again, you see what you're essentially getting here is 23 seconds worth of P1 time, and a lot of that is because Chicago is trying to hold this part of the map. The problem is they never actually break this position for Atlanta, and it leads to a really tough spot to where now all of a sudden you have to decide, how are we going to get into the back this way?
Oh, they spawned out. They all spawned out.
So here's our first instance where we've got a spawn out situation. And this is where I really want to sit down and really break down this moment that you're going to see. So again, just to hit it one last time, Atlanta was hard positioned up top, trying to make sure that they could respond to pressure this way. And if they needed to, there were 2 players that could turn and deal with any players from Chicago that are trying to make, this rotation right here. That's not exactly what you want, right? This has got to be a full flood, but because Chicago tried to do a little bit of both, they don't get the full flip until the hard point itself actually opens. But watch what Chicago does here. They try to essentially hold inside of this area without doing a lot of pressure out this way and without really having anybody deck this way. You saw at one moment in time, Stellium was actually positioned right here on this box, and his whole idea is to sit here and hold off any push that's coming from here. He can read that. His teammates that are positioned over here that are focused this way can then turn to respond. They do eventually get a break for Chicago, but they are not in a position to where they're doing the same thing at the moment. They are solely trying to hold from inside, and that will eventually lead to Atlanta making a play that allows them to kind of pinch up both sides. A lot of pressure eventually comes from the bottom before it comes from the top, and once again, Chicago will find themselves in a position to where they're spawning out, having to re-hit. The break initially was good for Chicago, but the problem comes with how they try to hold it.
Time dead.
Low left, no one try low left, absolute.
And you can see, again, Scumpy's trying to do what he can to get towards the outside. And these kills are great, but he has to play for time. There is no position for him to be here. So what you're going to get here, with a little bit of time left on the hill, 17 total seconds that are left, now you've got Chicago on this side of the map, and they have to try to rotate over in some form. And Dashy does a great job to get up top in this position, and he does allow an opportunity for Chicago to try to flood through to get into the hill, but what they're missing is the ability to pause this and try to flip out this spawn.
Okay.
Left, Alex, one shot left, more left. Yo, left.
Outer.
So again, the contest time inside the hill is good. It is eventually enough for them to get the spawns in the back. But what are they going to do to zone out the hill is the thing. This has been very scrappy. This is good contest time, but at no point have we seen Chicago dominating a hill. And you're hearing the call right now from Scump coming through. And what he's essentially saying is that this is going to be Atlanta continually trying to flood this left-hand side. The whole idea is if you can get to a position, no matter who you are, if you can contest this space up here, Chicago at best is going to be spawning right on the top side here. At worst, they start to spawn out, which is what you're going to see happen here in just a moment. Atlanta's going to make this a play. It's obviously been determined that they want to try to take away this part of the map. They don't necessarily care too much about hitting through catwalk, through topside fire. They want to make sure that they're going to be able to set up in a position to where they can watch you trying to reinforce the hill, and they can start to flood in, or best case scenario, they eventually flip the spawns. What you saw from Chicago there was quite the opposite. They were trying to hit through this topside fire, try to hit from the inside, a little bit of consideration up here, but at no point did we really see a mass amount of flood going through the top side of the map. They're trying to control through the middle of the map, which is understandable because you control the middle. Technically, you control the rotation, in this spot. But what they're missing and what you're going to start to see is that Atlanta will have the outside rotation controlled for a lot of these hills, and it actually forces Chicago to be pinned up in this position. Oops, pardon me. Pinned up in this position right in here. They never have an opportunity to respond to the AR presence that we're going to see from Atlanta that comes through. And a couple of great wins here. I mean, they get themselves into the hill. You saw it on P2 as well. You heard that Scump called out great wins. That was because they were winning from inside the hill, stopping spawns from being overly influential. And now, again, you're starting to hear the call coming through as we have a second to break this down, where you've got OpTic set up into a spot where, yeah, you've got Dashy right here. You've got players that are contesting inside the hill. But the problem is because Atlanta is, again, rotating this direction, it actually forces the spawn to be out, wrong buttons again, out to be down here for the rest of their teammates. So when they start to reinforce, what is the go-to call? They're likely going to try to reinforce here or here. And while this happens, Atlanta will be in a position where they're going to try to overwhelm this spot this way while also sending a member inside. So it's just a little bit of a difference as far as what exactly the teams are preferring to do right now. And not to say either are wrong, because this ends up becoming a very 50-50 hard point because of it.
I'm just playing the back.
One more cat.
So now as we go to P4, there's 2 down, there's 3 down for OpTic Chicago. And what they need to be trying to do in this instance is setting themselves in a spot to where they can actually start to zone. You want to try to be in a position here, be in a position here, be in a position here, and hold the time. And now you're going to see the smoke is going to come through for Atlanta, and Scump does an incredible job of finding a couple of kills, but because it is a 4-man hit towards the outside, it does eventually overwhelm. Dashy's going to do what he can to try to hold on, but the spawn is going to be a little bit further out than they'd like. So now all of a sudden Atlanta can make this push through, and this is actually a good contest of time for Atlanta. This is not guaranteed time at all for Chicago. They're outside the hill, and that's not great news. The good stuff is Scumpy does get right back through, and he's able to watch this cross. This is what he's talking about when he says, I'm going to watch your cross here, as we'll do a little bit of a blow up on this moment. Scumpy's going to sit into a position to where he says, I'm going to watch your cross. You just watch outer. This is a great 2-man hold because as Atlanta is still not spawning technically in, they have to make the decision of how are you going to break into this hard point, and it's going to be by both of those lanes. So this is actually a good position for Chicago to try to hold on to this, but again, the problem is the fact that they're spawning out. and they have to make the decision of, do we cross and climb over this little mantle spot, which is difficult, or do you do what you're seeing currently on screen, which is Dashy, who's trying to push around the back of the outside. And what this does every single time, it is allows Atlanta an opportunity to rotate. So they get a little bit of an edge right here, and now they're in a position where they can maybe grab a little bit of an edge, trying to rotate back over to get themselves back over towards P2. That's the whole idea as far as, again, playing from east to west more than playing from north to south. So they're able to break for Scrap, and again, we've got ourselves a 50-50 game right now. OpTic Chicago is going to set themselves up a bit of a setup where you've got, again, what you were getting dealt with early, where you've got a player here and a player here, and they're trying to zone off P1. And this is actually great time right now for Chicago. The problem is Simp is able to get onto Hill, and as if he finds 2 kills, that takes away the pressure from up top. Dashy is, again, in a key position. This is, again, the same setup that Celium and Arcinius were trying to do to them, where you get into this top corner, you watch here, you get down low, you watch here, your SMGs can then funnel through the middle. This is a better attempt for Chicago, but it is, again, because of the benefit of what side they're on. Being in the P2 spawn possession, it allows them to set up a little bit more passively in these positions to try to work this way. And now you're hearing the call-out started to come through for Atlanta. They're trying to full flood around the back. This is their whole play, is they're trying to overwhelm. And again, it's okay for Atlanta. It gives them a chance to contest, but Chicago still responds. This has been an incredible hill for Chicago as they try to work for the majority of time at P1, and now it just comes down to trying to hold off this position over towards P2. Need to, again, put a lot of attention and energy towards trying to zone the hill as much as possible in these positions, so that way you've got safe spawns here, and you can reinforce one direction or the other, depending on what happens. But again, you had this moment where you start to hear, and we'll break that down just a little bit more specifically. You had Atlanta trying to hit through the top side of the map. And that's exactly, I mean, you have one of 2 options, really. You can either flood through this direction that we've seen a lot of teams do, or try to overwhelm through the front. Last time around, Atlanta found success overwhelming from the south part of the map. This time, they're trying to overwhelm from the top, and they're trying to double hit this to try to force OpTic to spawn somewhere in this direction here. That's the whole spawn out. And they do end up spawning out in that spot. You can see that currently on the minimap up top. That bottom left-hand side is exactly what we're looking at. But a couple of key gunfight wins will actually make things a bit interesting, because there are a couple of wins that happen right here. And Dashy's actually going to grab himself a spawn that's simultaneous with Atlanta. They're both going to spawn right here together. And this is a key moment to figure out who exactly wins this hard point as we jump into it. Another big kill there for Dashy, but they're still spawning out, which is the problem. So again, these are big wins for Dashy. Huge moment for Dashy. Atlanta's still spawning in. Chicago is trying to do what they can to get into the hill by helping this rotation. Good 2 kills again for Scump. So again, we're getting ourselves a bit of a 50-50 battle, and there was that random spawn to where they spawn right next to each other. But as you see the time on the hard point, there's not a lot of time left. So it just comes down to, how do you go from 2 to 3? And this is where things will, again, eventually become the bane of existence for Chicago. What you're seeing right now is Scump is trying to make a play by himself, which is fine. This is going to happen very regularly on a small map like this, where he's going to try to make a solo play to get into the back this way. Meanwhile, Dashy and the rest of the team for Chicago are trying to hit the outside or the inside to get into this hard point. So this is, again, mostly focused for Chicago from this rotation right here. They want to try to get in here, or potentially here. They're not really playing for the outside lane. They just want to try to get into the hard point. They're relying on Scump to try to win spawns and potentially pinch. That will force a spawn out for Atlanta, where they would spawn somewhere in this area back here, if it's successful. Unfortunately, though, Scump has a bit of trouble trying to mantle over this wall, and he's going to get knocked out. Meanwhile, you'll also see Dashy's POV, where he's trying to play from inside P1, playing inside the hill. He doesn't really put himself in a position to watch this lane and allow his SMGs to flood through in some directions. He actually tries to play for the hill, and it's mostly successful as far as trying to keep the hill 50-50. The problem is the fact that Atlanta never gets broken from these spawns, and they're eventually going to overwhelm.
I'm hitting left right now, guys. I'm making a sneaky play.
So here's this play from Dashy, like we were mentioning.
Back row.
He's trying to play from inside. He's helping a little bit, but then as they double up for the hill itself, Celium and Abizi are able to find kills, and now that pinch completely goes unsuccessful. Tough scenes, but that's the whole idea coming through, was that you were going to try to play for this, you were going to try to play for this. The problem was nobody really locked down this lane, and Atlanta from inside the hill just did a better job of trying to hold from this position. So kind of a tough luck scenario coming through, but now there's 27 seconds left, and Atlanta's in a very controlling position. And again, what you're going to see trying to come through for OpTic Chicago is that they really want to take this building first and then try to play for the hill. They never fully commit to going all the way to the outside. This is what Atlanta did the last time through. Remember, they put that smoke down right here, and Atlanta would eventually get into a position where they overwhelm through it and force OpTic to spawn out. We're not going to necessarily see those things here from OpTic, as they're, again, trying to play through this catwalk rotation, trying to play through this rotation, and then make their move. This is an okay idea, and if you can get into a position that you control this, and you're hitting this, you will likely flip the spawns out. The problem just comes down to the timing of the kills, and as you hear it being called out, Atlanta's in a position to where, let's pause this real quick, Atlanta is in a position to where, as they're holding this defensively, their whole idea is you had one player in the hill, prone watching this, one player in the corner trying to help, one player outside trying to hold this, and then the last player you saw for a moment was kind of mid-map as they're trying to rotate around. It's kind of hard to tell where exactly Atlanta is spawning at the moment, if they're spawning in or if they're spawning out. Regardless, that player, if they are spawning out or in, are trying to do what they can to control this lane, even put a player back this way early. Once they get taken down, you hold from inside, and you've got players that can sit here to watch this cross through top and bottom side fire. Chicago, because they're trying to multifaceted hit this in multiple directions, they're never able to overwhelm any of those angles. Everything is being picked up individually, and this is one of the things that you're going to see a lot of when we go from 5v5 to 4v4. Not having that extra member is going to be very detrimental when it comes to trying to flip out those spawns if you're not able to convincingly do things. So now you got, again, the same rotation. You can kind of see it on the mini-map. This is, again, Chicago trying to hit from this angle. Oops, pardon me. From this angle here, while you've got one player on the outside. They're trying to overwhelm, but they're not doing it together from the outside lane because the ARs for Atlanta are starting to really dominate that rotation.
Yeah, there's all watching the cross.
There it is again, all watching the cross. There's all the kills, and now you've got OpTic Chicago starting to spawn all the way back this way, which is not where you want to be, because now all of a sudden Atlanta, they can actually put themselves in positions to watch out here for the initial and watch back here, and then once they get their kills on one side or the other, they can start to push through. That's the whole idea that Atlanta is trying to do. You hear Scump try to talk about that right now, talking about his AR specifically, trying to get in, not quite able to do it. So it's just a really tough situation. Unfortunately, Chicago do have themselves a P2 spawn, but the problem here is the clock is becoming a problem as far as the overall score. I don't know what actually just cropped this in-game overlay, but now the spawns are starting to come through. So again, it's just one of those things that as you see it occurring, Atlanta puts themselves into a position to where they're trying to hold this, they're trying to hold this. Once they find the kills, they try to get into this position or this position, this time specifically through. We'll just let that fade away. This time all the way through, Atlanta finds some good kills on the hard point. Then they push through. It forces Chicago to spawn over here. And again, Atlanta has the same setup they had the last time, which is you've got an AR player. Oops. You've got an AR player who's watching up top and an AR player that could essentially help him to watch behind or watch through here, while Chicago only has one option, and that's trying to funnel this way. So it's one of those things that overall, the biggest thing that we could really take away as far as what Chicago was trying to do, they were trying to play rotations kind of like this, playing over the middle of the map. They were putting a lot of attention trying to control these two buildings, which again is not necessarily something that's bad or wrong. It just came down to a couple of key moments to where Atlanta, who's trying to make this happen more often than not, I guess those arrows could go technically both ways. they're trying to make this control happen. They're able to essentially allow Chicago to stay indoors and then pinch them up when they try to come out. That's the whole idea that was being played in there for Atlanta and why it was so successful for them at the very end through P3 and P4. Really hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, it's something that I'm trying out. I'm still learning the game, so some of my analysis might not exactly be 100% correct, but I hope that overall you guys enjoyed the insight, and maybe, again, you can get down in the comments and maybe point out some things that I may have missed. Also, beyond that, let me know who you guys want to see more of as we get into the early preseason stages. First ever Scrim analysis video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Till the next one, hope you keep holding it down. So long.